Today we're discussing the state of Pulverize on the PTR for Season 5. So the TLDR is that it is better than it currently is on the live servers for Season 4, as long as everything stays the same as we have it here on the PTR currently. But Pulverize could still definitely use some help. I think the base damage of Pulverize still needs to be increased a good bit. I'd like to see a way to consistently overpower on single targets. Well, let's talk about some of the changes for Season 5. So one of the big ones is that we're not running Shepherds anymore. Shepherds only applies to companion skills now, opposed to applying to core and wrath skills. This is completely out of the build, but that's fantastic because that means we don't have to run 3 companions and just basically shove companions into every single build that we run. It's not that big of a deal for this build anyways, because we were only running this on the amulet. We weren't running it on a 2-hand weapon. So what we do instead is, if we're running a legendary amulet, you put Aspect of Changeling's Debt on the amulet, or potentially we're going to be running the new Lochan Talisman. And we'll talk more about that here in just a minute. But yeah, so not running Shepherds anymore means that we can actually run some other skills for once. So we are still running Poison Creeper. This is our consistent way to poison enemies. And then I'm currently running Trample and then Cyclone Armor. And you could easily run another defensive skill over Trample as well. So one of the huge damage increases that we're getting this season is the Crown of Lucian. So this reads gain 75% resource cost reduction, and then stacking up to 5 times, you get a damage increase and then an increase to your resource costs. So if you have a max rolled one of these, you're getting a 125% damage multiplier. This also rolls with plus to core skills. So this is going to replace the Harlequin Crest. So we are losing some damage reduction from the Harlequin Crest, but we can make that up in other areas. And actually, we'll be able to get more plus ranks to Pulverize potentially with this helmet over the Shaco. Now, you aren't getting plus ranks to all skills with this, but Pulverize itself will get more ranks. So then we have the new Lochan Talisman. The way this reads is, you gain critical strike chance per point of primary resource you have, up to a percentage. So if this is max rolled, it's up to 50%. And then each point of primary resource above 100 grants 1% critical strike damage instead. So even though this reads as an additive critical strike damage increase, it is currently a multiplier. So it remains to be seen if this is intended, if it's supposed to be a multiplier, if the tooltip is just incorrect. We don't know for sure. So we'll have to figure that out when Season 5 actually drops. The one thing that you have to do with this is you have to stack some maximum resource, which is actually pretty easy to do as a Druid. You're getting maximum resource on the talisman itself. You get maximum resource on the new crown. We can run the Gift of the Stag Spirit Boon for 40 maximum spirit. And then if you look at the Ancestral Guidance Paragon board, there's a decent amount of maximum resource, maximum spirit that you can get here as well. And some of it I actually don't even have at the moment. There's another 8 or so, I believe, that I don't currently have. So if you get some greater affix rolls on Lochan's Talisman and the Crown on that maximum resource stat, you can stack this up pretty high, getting probably around 300 or so maximum resource. So, potentially you're talking about a 150 to 200% critical strike damage multiplier and 50% critical strike chance just from this amulet. Now, with that said, a normal amulet is still totally fine to run. I was still getting overpowers for over 1 billion with just a legendary amulet with ranks to Envenom. Now, something to keep in mind with this new helmet, you are going to have increased resource costs more than we're used to with Pulverize. So something like the Ring of Starless Skies is probably more of a consideration now with running this new helmet. I didn't like it very much in Season 4 on my Pulverize build, but I think now, if it's something that you want to run, you definitely fit it in. But if you can fix your resources in other ways, I still think a legendary ring is going to be a better option. So for weapons, they've changed some things around a good bit. So the staff that we were running in Season 4, the implicit on this is now damage over time. It was damage to crowd-controlled enemies, which helped us max out our Earth and Devastation legendary node on the Paragon board. So it's a little bit more difficult to max that out now. And really the only reason to run a staff at this point would just be that it's a faster attacking weapon than some of the other two-handed weapons. So if you want it for that reason, you can still run it. But at this point, you're probably looking at running a two-handed mace with the overpower damage implicit. It also has a higher damage range, so you can hit harder with it, just you're not going to be attacking as quickly. We're also able to run pole arms now as a druid. So this is also a consideration. The implicit is vulnerable damage, which isn't the greatest, but if you had a really well-rolled pole arm, you could definitely run this as well. So one thing that we know that we're getting in Season 5 is some revamps to uniques that aren't currently on the PTR at the moment. Some of these uniques are going to be getting buffed, and we just don't know yet how much they're getting buffed. So Insatiable Fury, for instance, is already close to best in slot for this build. It's up there, depending on who you ask. And so if this thing's going to get buffed considerably, there's a very good chance that we're going to be running this in the build. It already gives us tons of things that we want. Overpowered damage, damage reduction while fortified, ranks to Pulverize. So that just kind of remains to be seen. Similarly, with something like Tybalt's Will, this helps us fix our resources, especially with that new crown increasing our resource cost. We'll just have to see what they do with these items. Now, another thing to keep in mind, now that we don't have to run 3 companions, we're able to run potentially other sources of Unstoppable. So, Trample, for instance, we can run Earthen Bulwark for another source of Unstoppable if we wanted to, which means that maybe we don't have to run the Metamorphosis boots anymore. And if that's the case, then potentially we can put some Wildheart Hungers into the build to get another damage multiplier. And these also have good stats for an overpowered Pulverized build with critical strike damage and overpowered damage. The main thing here is I'm kind of just waiting to see what they do exactly with the uniques, how they're buffed, how good they're going to be, and then we can figure that out once we find that out getting closer to Season 5. So anyways, guys, I'm going to make this short. I think that Pulverize should be in its best state that it's ever been in. It could still use some more help, and maybe we'll see some increases to it before the season actually drops. That's partially what this PTR is for, to see the power level of things. So we'll see how that goes. Anyways, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.